was something I was going to say. I can't remember what it was. The raffle. We're going to have the raffle at the end. I'm not sure the treasurer has approved this, but the secretary has proposed that we give our guests a free gift at the end of the afternoon. So those of you who are here, we'll be giving out a free gift. So I'll leave the treasurer staggered by the generosity of the society that he controls.
You can hear me now? Oh, right, okay. No light, but...
We didn't pay for the light.
Don't know whether that means the battery's nearly flat or what.
Oh, well, I'll have to show it.
Albert, can you just unplug that?
Brazil, Chris, you're going to have to shout very loudly.
Thank you very much.
There is that, yes. Brazil.
There you go.
Really? Is this on? Good. The light is dead. Right, it's me again. I feel about this small after hearing Charles talking about what he's doing. Fantastic stuff. I'll try and keep it brief, starting about well, nearly 10 minutes late after the messing about, so apologies for that. Most of you will have been down the other end and hopefully had a little play or at least seen what we're doing with VMix. So I'll go through it fairly fast and see if we can crack it in 23 minutes. So, as before, what is it? Well, that's what they say it is. Video mixer and switcher. All the usual sales spiel. I won't bother reading it all. I think it's pretty neat. That's my opinion. It's great value, free. It can get quite expensive when you go to the higher end versions of it, but the basic version is certainly more than adequate for anything I'm doing with Amazon TV. I got this third hand, but Charles apparently called it an easy way to overlay a call sign, which it is. Does a lot more besides. And I do actually hide the state of my shack by having a false one with all this wonderful equipment behind me. You may have noticed at the end there. But really, it's fantastically powerful. Limited really by the PC rather than by the software itself, especially in the HD versions and so forth. It's a fantastic piece of kit. Why use it? Well, it's good fun actually. None of this reading reams of paper and all the rest of it. It's pretty intuitive. It's probably the best package I've come across for just being able to pick it up and play with it. Once you get it installed, there is that one caveat. It can look very slick. It's such a brilliant way of bringing things together. I mean, we've all seen the situation where someone says, "Oh, I'll just show you a video clip," and they unplug a lead and plug another lead in, or they push a button or something, and you know, this just brings it all onto your desktop on your computer. It's brilliant from that point of view. And the other thing that's come up a few times down the end is, well, it's all in the digital domain. The little camera, I've got the primary camera down the end there, it has a DV output on Firewire, so it's going digitally to the PC. everything in the PC is done digitally, and then it's going out through the ATV Express. So the entire process, apart from the camera itself, and someone mentioned the LCD display, is all digital. So you're preserving the quality right the way through the signal chain, which is important, they tell me. So what have we got? Along the bottom there, we have a series of inputs, little miniature previews of several different inputs. In this case, I've got a little text overlay. Where's that big pointer? I've got some idiot. I've got a video clip, gentleman I think we saw earlier briefly, making hummus. And I've got this little kind of studio picture. Then we have the main preview window. This is where we load something up to work on it and see what's going to come up next. And we have our station output, if you like. This is where what we're actually transmitting goes out from. So when it's running, that should be what's coming out the receiver at the other end. Doesn't always, because of course there's a lag, but you know, it's pretty good. Anyway, so those are the elements. There's controls all around the edges which do different things. It doesn't have your conventional Windows menu as such, but they're all just tucked off to the sides. The primary controls are these, and these allow you to basically mix between this and this. So whatever's in here, when I hit cut, that will go to there and that will go to there. I can then click on something down here and it'll get loaded into the preview window. I hit cut again and they swap again. So we're constantly transitioning between the main preview on the left here and the output there. Now, in theory, I could get the right one, bring the real thing up, grab the mouse, and if it reaches, we can play around with it. So there you go. Now you'll notice that that is in fact somebody moving around. It's a video clip I took 5 minutes ago, just before we came through. And that's automatically played, which is quite a neat feature. So you can have your video queued up at a cue point part way through, for example, which you've worked out back when it was over. Oh, mouse click. I think the mouse is just slightly out of range. I'll sit here and see if I can do it. There we go. So you can actually choose your cue point, and then when you bring it over, it plays from that cue point, which is really quite a neat feature. I do like that. Meanwhile, while he's talking, we'll bring him up, and then we can just bring that over again. So that's now paused, and this is carrying on. They're both set up to loop, so just for the purpose of the demo today, really. Anyway, so quite a neat, quite an easy to use tool. Moving on, because we are fairly tight for time. What can we put into it? Well, cameras obviously, video clips as we just saw, text and graphics, images, slideshows, video streams, screen all of these things, and a virtual set, which I will cover in little detail later. What comes out? Well, obviously the screen. You may have noticed at the top of the screen there, it had a big green button marked full screen. If I had an external monitor connected and it was not running in slideshow mode, as we are as a duplicate monitor, then that would be my output. So I could have that as a big display at a presentation like this, and be sitting here doing Frank's job there. And it would all be very slick. Or that could be getting fed off to a transmitter, of course, whatever. Streams and so forth. We can record the disc. Interestingly, on the paid-for versions, you can record each individual input individually to disk, as well as the station output. So you end up with a whole host of recordings of everything that has happened. It's really quite useful where you've got a big event and you're kind of doing it all live, and then afterwards you want to come back and just re-edit it because you've got all the original sources. And then, of course, direct show virtual devices. Now Charles touched on the graph, the filter graphs. VMix produces an output what could be used as an input to one of those filter graphs. I'm not going to talk about filter graphs because I use FFmpeg, which we covered this morning. The filter graph he showed you is doing much the same sort of job as I'm using FFmpeg for. Sorry, I should have had a drink of water with me, shouldn't I? Getting thirsty. But those two direct show devices are what FFmpeg or the Filter Studio can use as an input. So that's how FFmpeg is grabbing the output from VMix to stick out through to DATV Express. That's the key to it. And of course any program that can see those devices, to them it's just another input, like another camera or something else. So if you've got a Windows program that can see a camera, it can see the output of VMix. Brilliant. So, well, we saw what we did there. We just selected it, previewed it, made it live, played it. Transitions, let's have a look at a few transitions. There's a list of them. I'll run through a few just to mess about. Mouse won't reach there. Sit here. So obviously we've got the cut. We can fade. We can wipe. We can vertical wipe. Oh, brilliant! Thank you. Then it gets a bit silly. You can do stuff like that, and there's a whole load more you can bring up. What do you fancy? Fly rotate. Let's fly rotate it. In there you can also say how long it's going to take for that transition. So if you want to make a slow fade, for example, we could knock that back to 3 seconds. That's in milliseconds. I'll make it a fade. And there's your fade. So it's really flexible. There's a lot of things you can do, and whatever effects you drag up onto here, whatever transitions you drag up onto here, are there for you to use as you wish. So you know, if you've got a plan to do something, you can preload it all. I won't go through all of them. Overlays. We're all familiar with the 3 RGB values. Quite often in a file you'll have an alpha channel, which is the 4th value, which just says how intense or how transparent something is. So with an overlay you'll design a graphic and you'll specify that most of it's transparent. GIF is where we come across this mostly, isn't it, in a GIF image. So if you want to put some simple text and graphics, this is the bottom third of course, or your little logo up on the top there. This is the way that you do it. Now they've really pushed the boat out on this. It's very good indeed. I'll bring up a simple overlay which I've preloaded somewhere. Oh, it's scrolled out of. The screen's got smaller, so it's disappeared, but it's here still. I can simply overlay that text, and that's now on my station output. And that will stay there whatever I do, because I've overlaid it. So I can have whatever source I like, and that graphic will always be there. What haven't we had? That one we haven't had. So I'll fade that in. And the overlay stayed even through the fade, didn't fade out or anything. So that's always there. Now, it's a shame that's hiding. Let's drag it up. Oh, let's work on it there. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that one, and I'm going to add another input now. So here's all the inputs. That's the one that I want. And let's have I don't know, something purple, say. So now we can put some text in, CAT15, and we'll put a description in. Did that go in the right box just now? I don't know. For the sake of argument. Okay, close that. Hopefully that's appeared somewhere down here. There it is. And we can overlay that instead. So now we've got a very nice little graphic. And if I go back to the add input again, you can see there was a whole host of different presets there which you can play with. Animated ones, God knows what they do, the text moves around and things. Scoreboards, timers, tickers, you know, it goes on. You can even put 2 people side by side if you wish, have 2 different things on screen. So this is all predefined, and if you want to change things or make your own, they've got this XAML, which is basically XML with knobs on, so you can generate your own graphics and things. It's really quite neat. Right, let's escape out of that. Now close the thing. There we go. Go back and see what's next. I'm going fairly quickly, but I'm going to push it to get there for 22. Right. Yeah, I've covered all of that. Make your own was the last thing I said pretty much. Chroma key, well that's what the demo at the end was all about. It's basic, but it works quite well on VMix. I found actually coming here using the back cloth that I've got here today, it's actually easier to set up than the back cloth I've got at home, which is a slightly lime green because it's a roller blind, and since it's in my workshop I want it out of the way most of the time, but I don't want the faff of rigging it and de-rigging it, so I just put a roller blind in. And because that's not a perfect green, it's actually harder to set up. Here, as you'll see in a minute, it's a one click and you're done almost. And it's really good when you see it combined with a virtual set, as we've had on the demo down the end there. In terms of the quality of the Chroma keying, Open Broadcast is actually better, and out of preference I use that in my day-to-day kind of TM working and so forth, as in working on GB3 TM. So I think I've got a thing there to remind me to go and play with it. So let's play green screen. Where's that input? So here's the input. This is this video clip we were playing with earlier. I'll set that rolling. Now to chroma key that, we go into colour key, enable it, choose the background colour, hit auto, turn on anti-aliasing, and perhaps just push up the filtering a bit. I'm touching the filtering because if you look, there's like little jaggies and fringing around the edge there, just around my shoulders and my head. I'm just pushing that up, just smooth some of that out. You kind of mess about with it. You can fine tune exactly the colour by playing with these. You know, there's a lot of things you can play with. If you want to luma key, you can actually do that based on how bright something is and have a background image coming in through the object as well. So there's a lot of flexibility, but that's our basic chroma key done there. So that's ready for loading over another image. Let's see what we might load it over. How about this one? If I bring that one up and go on to multi-view, then I can add to that. That capture is the one we're playing with. So there I am. I'm not really very well placed there, so I'm going to have to rearrange the position. Drop it down. You get the idea. There's a little bit of black coming in that just needs cropping out, but I'm not going to worry about that too much just now. Time being as it is, I could try X2 I need. Oh, there we go. So there I am sitting behind the desk doing my presentation, which is quite neat really, isn't it? So there's the green screen. I might just pop that overlay off now because it's taking up an awful lot of the output shot. You may have noticed earlier that FFmpeg, as I have it implemented, drops my call sign and stuff up to the left there. Looks a bit like this. That was done just with Paint Shop or something, but FFmpeg does it on the fly for me, so I don't actually need to have an overlay on here, which is handy because there's only 4 inputs on the free and I don't have to waste one doing an overlay. So there I am beavering away, and I'm going to show a little video clip in a minute, which is this one. But let's preload it on the screen, shall we? I've done this slightly wrong because what I should have done is put the capture on number 2 to bring it forward, because they're in layers stacked behind each other, and put the video behind. And now we need to just adjust the video position. So let's bring that over. I might have cheated slightly here by pre-zooming things, but I don't care. Time is against me. You get the idea there. So there we are. And if I want to check how well that's working, I can just click on that there, and we get a nearly full screen view of the finished result, which I think you'll agree is quite neat really, isn't it? How do we get out of that? Click on it. So that's the green screen and building up of layers of images and dynamic content. Anything can be loaded on there. You can even do screen grab, so if you've got a program running that you want to share with somebody, you can have that coming out on your broadcast. In fact, we've done this a few times, haven't we, John, where we've been going through details of how to configure aspects of VMix and other programs, and either Peter or myself will be sending on the TM repeater a screenshot showing just how to do it. So then we move on to virtual sets. This is a whole new thing with the overlaying, where we've actually got effectively a 3D studio. Now these are predefined. There's a number that come with the program, and you can build your own. They have basically four elements. The background, which is a graphic, much as we just saw being used as a studio or whatever. Foreground, that's rather neat, because that means if you've got, say, a curved desk, you may have noticed the bottom of my image was cut off flat, but the foreground gives you the ability to position another image in front, so you can have just a cutout of that curved desk cutting off the bottom of the graphic of the presenter. The talent is, well, that's Muggins, that's the person sat at the desk, and then screens, you can have multiple screens on the thing, that's your background screen. So let's, I think we need to go and play around with that. Yeah, we'll move, I'll go through that first. Now hopefully I've got a preset saved here, which is that one. And we'll have all of that. Presets are brilliant because you can leave it all set up ready for the next time you want to use it, or as I am here. So that is a virtual setup, much the same as I just did. There's the virtual set itself. We're using colour bars for our screen, and we're using the capture there. But rather than having to set it up manually, when we're putting that together, we just click on this setup button over here, and we choose our layer. So we've got a screen, say, and we can then choose which input we're going to use. So I could put myself up there, or I could go back to the little news banner, you can just see it poking there, or go back to the colour bars. Missed it. So that's how easy it is to set up. You'll notice that on the foreground of this desk I've got a curved bottom, so that's the purpose of the foreground. So it now looks like I'm behind the desk rather than sprouting forth from the middle of it, which is a little unrealistic. However, there's a caveat to that. If you want to use reflections, that doesn't work. And I quite like the reflections aspect. So if we go to the foreground setting and hide it, now you'll see there's a reflection of me in that desktop. And the working out how to do that yourself with your own graphics is quite challenging. Basically you have a colour plot, and then you have a faded out version of the same colours, and VMix maps what it sees in the full colour onto the reduced colour area. It's really, really rather neat. Yeah, sorry. There you go. But it's a neat thing, and some of their sets have actually used this so that you have your presenter stood there, and then whatever's on screen appears on 4 different screens around this massive virtual studio. You know, it's really quite neat the way they do it. So that's the different layers. Talent is obviously me. Frame is what's going on the screen. No, screen is what's going on the screen behind. Frame allows you to turn the frame around that screen on and off. It's as simple as that. Quite why we need that on there, I don't know, but it's there. It's great. So it's all running away. That should be up there in theory, because I'm going to go to that next in my presentation. So let's see what else we've got. Okay, so we've got preset viewpoints. There are 4 preset viewpoints which you can adjust. And if we go back out of setup to camera, these are our 4 viewpoints. So if I want to impress the natives, all I do is zoom in, and there I am. Or if I really want to impress them with how big my studio really is, then I click that one, and there we are. Now that is really quite an impressive studio, isn't it? I must just give credit to it. I don't know who the author of this picture was, but it's a picture I found online on a site that said it was open, you know, for free use, And I just thought, wow, and it's a stunningly large graphic, and it works so well in this. It's marvellous. So you can see why I chose it. It's great. But it's rather neat the way it kind of pans and zooms dynamically, moving all the elements. If you think about what's going on there, everything is resizing the video clip of me, whatever's on the screen, and it does it all just perfectly. I have to say, DATV Express with FFmpeg struggle with the amount of data that's changing momentarily when that's going on. But that's another story, isn't it, Jean-Pierre? Oh dear. Anyway, right. So that's it. The two-person interview screen, that scene. That really, the basic version of that we saw as part of the overlays, but you can obviously build up all sorts of things. In my article in the last CQTV, I've got about 30 seconds left, haven't I? I'll run on. Okay. In the article, you may have seen there's a screenshot from TM, and in fact I had Peter sitting at the desk in that scene, in that set. So Peter was sitting here and I was on screen as though I was the guest. And the reason we did that, although it was coming from my transmitter and my VMix, was he was coming in on DVB-T on 70 SEMS to me, and I was transmitting on 23 SEMS up to the repeater. And that was how we did it. So he was live in the studio, he had a green screen behind him, so I was able to chroma key him from his received image with the green behind him. He didn't do the chroma key, I did that. And then put myself on screen, and I rolled up the roller blind so you could see the workshop behind me. It was quite amusing the way it worked out. But yeah, it's all fun. I think I titled that something like fun with DATV in North Wales or something, and it was good fun at the time. You know, we were just having a laugh, trying things out, and we thoroughly enjoyed it.
Chris, could you at that point chroma key two different scenes with different backdrops?
I did, and that was the point at which I discovered that I had a lot of fluff in my laptop that was blocking the heat ventilation. Because I actually got this horrible moment where everything just kind of slowed down like this and the laptop shut down. And when I powered it up, I looked in the Windows event log and it said there'd been a thermal event on the CPU core. So I took the thing apart, cleaned out all the fluff, and it worked fine after that. But yeah, that 4-year-old laptop, what do you expect? So yes, you can, but with the right processor. It is, as I say, limited by the processing power. And of course, each of those individual chroma keys could have a different colour background, and you know, they're independent of each other. So it's fantastic from that point of view. Now, I've mentioned this building your own business. Well, if we go back to our earlier set, you may recall a set that looked a bit like that. It looked rather nicer. In fact, I might just reload it just for comparison, if you'll bear with me. I'll reload that preset. It's number 1. Yep. That's the set that we're playing with here. Now, it looks fairly basic, doesn't it? It's a desktop and a screen and a little bit of background. But going back to what we were looking at a moment ago, that is actually Google SketchUp, and that's what I actually generated this virtual set in, or this backdrop. And there's a bit more to it than you're seeing there. If I zoom out a bit, you get the idea. If I move around a bit, that's just what goes into building a virtual set. That's all been built out of my head, just using very simple cylinders and squares and things, and pulling and pushing them up and down in Google SketchUp. And these spheres floating around here are light sources. So when this is rendered, which I use something called Maxwell Fire for, and that's going to come up and slow everything down now. This takes a good 2 or 3 hours to render the scene fully, but you'll start to see it render as quickly as that. You can start to get an impression of what it's going to be like. You can see the lights reflected on the curved edges of the desks and on this footpad, and on the screen there. So hence all the lights and all the rest of it. I'm going to put that off now because it does take forever. But just going back to our, in fact perhaps I should bring a picture up, I don't know. Let's go back to there. But here are some of those light sources reflected. We've got reflections on the edges of the monitor. I made them just a nice shiny aluminium. We've even got a reflection from that shining up the wall, which is why the wall's a little brighter there. It's a fantastic bit of software, and it makes for a very realistic looking set. Not a patch on that blue one that I found online, but hey, I was quite proud of it myself. So it is possible to do it. I'm not going to pretend it didn't take a long time. It did. So I've shown that. So what can we send it out to? Well, other programs, anything really that recognises the what are they called? Direct show devices. Mental block on the word direct show there. Open broadcast, FFmpeg, VLC, anything that will see those devices. Where can we get stuff in from? Open broadcast, Adobe Media Server. That's quite handy because you can send open broadcast output to Adobe Media Server into VMix, into ATV Express. The CPU at this point is groaning a bit, but it does work. So that's handy because you can do the Chroma keying rather better in open broadcast and then combine it with overlays and video clips and things from VMix, which is nice. VLC we touched on yesterday, I think, didn't we? One hot recommendation, if you're going to buy it or use it, buy a decent graphics card. The reason I say that is that the bulk of the work is offloaded onto the graphics card. It doesn't get done on the CPU. This is running, I think, some green screen there. Yeah, that's albeit static, but that is actually a green screen going on there. And the CPU is 1%. Even when that's all running, if we have videos running and things. I've killed all the overlays and things now, but if I set that running, it's still pretty low, 20%, because we're actually running video now, so it's having to pull the stuff from the disk. But all the graphics work is being done by the GPU rather than the CPU, so it's pretty good from that point of view. But it does mean you need a decent graphics card, as it says there, a decent NVIDIA, Blackmagic 3D, things like that. Look at the VMix website, get the recommendation. My colleague Peter gave me his cast off, well, sold me his cast off, and thank you, Peter. Bought himself an i7, which absolutely flies. It's definitely the way to go if you really want to get the best out of it. But you know, this thing ran quite happily for a year or so playing with VMix, even with dual inputs when we were doing the DVB-T stuff. And it's only an i3. It's basic stuff. I'd love to see if it would run on a PPAC, but I'm not sure that it would. I think it might be challenging. Brian over there is smiley. I think he might be having a go when he gets home. As I say, there's the basic version. That's free. It's limited to 4 inputs. There's other limitations on it. There's one overlay, for example, but it's good enough for most of what I'm doing. You can pay about 60 quid and get the SD version. That gives you the full functionality, but limited to 720 by 576. And then you get HD and various other versions. You can even buy a hardware package which costs absolutely thousands that includes all of this and the hardware too. So you know, they really are going for it. As I say, the high-end versions, it's limited by the hardware. This is in use by professional video production companies, and you can see why. Other programs, well, there's GL Mixer. That's quite a neat. It's aimed at VJs rather than people like ourselves. It's much less intuitive, but in some ways it's more powerful, so it's quite an interesting little program. That runs under Windows or Linux. Webcam Mixer is Windows, but it's very, very basic, but it does do stuff. So you know, if you've got a very old machine, that's quite a good place to start. SnowMix, I understand, is very powerful. I've seen the demos. I've loaded it. It's Linux. Blimey, it's hard to get your head around. It's all scripts and God knows what. Very, very steep learning curve on it. So I declined to continue investing time in it in the end. And there's Webcam Studio, which is rather nice on Linux. And if you were here this morning, you'll have heard me mention that all 3 of GStreamer, LibAV and FFmpeg are selectable. Well, that's the program where you choose which one you're going to use for your inputs and outputs. And it does make a difference. That, since I've got the screenshot, I've stuck it in. That is GL Mixer, and it's an unusual interface. How this works is this is your control surface, if you like, and as you drag things in and out, so if I drag that into the middle, they come up in brightness on your output. So the picture there that's in the middle is what's currently on output, and if I dragged one of these in and dragged that one out, then it would take over. So your transition is kind of under manual control. This is where your video jock comes in, because they're kind of mixing stuff on the fly, and perhaps they have a touch screen to do it with and all that, and I can kind of see how that would work. If you want to do a smooth transition between two different sources, then you can actually click on the two of them, and then as you drag one in, the other one drags out. So it is possible to do, but yeah. It is, however, a very powerful piece of software, so it's worth a look. It's also free. Anyway, I think that's about it. Thank you. I'll swig that water now.
Okay, I think as far as the streaming goes, I think that's probably it. So, say goodbye to all our streaming friends. Any questions for Chris? I mean, that was amazing, wasn't it? Just on a laptop, absolutely incredible. And I think that's one of the things we need to do to liven up activity a bit. I was just saying to Frank, he needs to get onto our local repeater HV and start playing with that stuff, and it gets people talking. You know, I think on TM it's really been a big topic of conversation. And